Welcome to the final matchup of the day. That's matchup number 5, and we're finally going to get to see Nocturns and Arial Arise going head to head. Now, Tanner, we'll start with Nocturns. This is a team that, score sheet wise, came in 10th. You're just missing out on relegations. They had some impressive matchups last year. This isn't a team that looked bad. They were just on the unfortunate end of the most skillful stage that we've seen in Challenger League. And they do have roster changes as they've had many, many times before.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that they're bad. It's just that they weren't good enough. Which,
Mhm.
previous iterations of this roster, if they had that roster maybe in stage 2 or stage 1 of last year, maybe they would have looked really, really solid. But until then, or unless that happens, they need to really step up their game. And I think they tried to do that this offseason. The big additions coming onto this roster, you see Doc and Splash coming from T3 and Splash, he's coming in from the side of ATK. I believe Splash right now is considered a coach or a sub, but I believe he's filling in for today for the side of Nocturnes. And you got Zeno. Zeno was on the side of Carnico. He's someone that we thought was going to be a massive star for a long time. And he wasn't. I don't know if he wasn't happy with the system before, or he just was looking for a different look. Sometimes players need that, and now he's on the side of Nocturne. So overall, you've got like 3/5 of a roster change, which is pushing the limits there. But
Mhm.
at the same time, I'm really excited to see what they can do because every single person on this roster, for the most part, could shoot. And then you got Papa P, Mr. Poison himself. He's a pretty solid IGL. We've been looking at him for a while to kind of step out of the shadow of Nyx. Nyx went off, back to Mirage. So now he's got full reins and control of what's going on Nocturnes.
I just for the fun of the crowd, I would like to point this out. We're looking at the roster right there. Lackey, who has now moved to a sub role, was the last name on that team. That's going all the way back to stage 1 of last year, and I'll read this out for you.
Mhm.
Exod, Lackey, FICO, Darkin, and Sykes. That was the original 5 for that role or for that team. And I guess it's kind of like the irony is Nocturnes has managed to stick around for this long as Nocturnes under that banner, change by change, and finally we've now seen that entire roster flip over. So it's pretty wild what we've seen take place in a little over a year now. Connor, Arial Rise. This is a team that we've seen them, but they're not the same Arial Rise. They're a new Arial Rise, but they're a pretty good Arial Rise. Did I say that enough for you? Can I do I have to say the
Um,
name again?
no,
Will you?
because if you think about this actual group of players, sure, the org, they're getting different teams, but the core group, it's very similar across multiple stages. The complete opposite of Nocturnes, who's swapping out 3/5 of their team. Guess how many roster moves Ariel Arise made between
4/5.
stages?
4/5. I say four
They made
fifths.
0. They
Oh,
made
I was
0
wrong.
changes. They've got all 5 players back. The only difference is that they decided to pack up Smitty into a wonderful little box and send him over to Parabellum in Las Vegas. So they did lose a support staff member who was incredibly good. He was incredible at his job. He helped, and obviously, you have to be pretty dang good to get a pro league spot off of it. So it's going to feel that loss in the support system. But Jay, Reed Sink, Reed Adams, freaking Mohest dynamic duo. This is a team that pretty much everybody can frag and everybody has experience. There's no real question marks on the team anymore because last stage was Reed Singh's first. Now he's got that experience as well as the experience of the entire team. He can still lean upon if necessary.
Mhm. One of the good things, though, when we're looking at this matchup, we know how good Ariel Arise is forceful, is that when you look at Nocturnes, their best matchups last stage came against the good teams. That's when they were at their best, is when they were given a challenge, and they would succeed a lot of the time.
Absolutely. Well, it's a team with like a really strong support staff. You still have Dauntless. I guess you have Splash now. They picked up a couple analysts. So it's like they have the ability to go in and try and understand their opponents and try and apply some counter stratting. And that's kind of what I'm looking to see coming out from the side of Nocturnes. Aerial Rise, they have a lot of odd footage on what they're doing. Did they go through and prepare for these opponents? And when the opponents are good, you can typically see what they're trying to do. If a team doesn't know what they're doing, like how can you predict them? So that's probably why they're doing better against these better teams is in their prep work and in their staff work.
Mhm.
My biggest concerns though for this game, definitely team chemistry coming out from the side of Nocturnes. Making a 3/5 roster change, that's an entirely different roster at this point. You might as well just like added the 2 people from the previous roster to a new roster. It's a chemistry culture shift to a
Mhm.
T. It's going to be nuts. And then the second thing that kind of I want to kind of pay attention to is that element of surprise. Like last stage we saw Nocturnes, they had a lot of like one-off plays, like one-off rushes. We're gonna rush this, we're gonna impact this. We had a lot of good micro plays that were like they looked really well rehearsed and they threw a lot of teams off. And one of those teams that we saw that it threw off was Arial Rise, specifically on Bank, with a couple of their rushes and a couple of the plays that they're making. I think if they're looking to have any success against a team like Arial Rise, who just won 7-2
Mm.
versus Gaming Gladiators, they're going to need to pull out these plays right away. And if they can do that, they have a pretty good chance of maybe pulling an upset here. What do you think, Connor?
Yeah, I think the upset definitely has potential because of just how frag heavy this Nocturnes team is. I like to think of it not as the old Nocturnes at all. There's almost no remnants of it besides Papa P and now Slothy coming in from last stage, where this is almost just is an old T3 style team that Mr. Poison would IGL, where
Mhm.
he's going to be shot calling. Everybody on the roster can shoot. He has the least amount of mechanical skill on the roster, and that's saying something because he still does shoot back.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, Ariel Arise, let's talk about them a bit because they won today and they won quite well. Gaming Gladiators, still kind of an unknown quantity in what they'll contribute to this stage, but 7-2 nonetheless. These are all competitive teams. That's a pretty impressive victory.
Oh yeah, for sure, and that's probably in part to the consistency that we've seen across their roster. Because
Mhm.
whenever you have a roster move, you're going to take steps back. You're going to take steps back, and you're going to have to try to catch back up to the level you were, and then hopefully you have a higher ceiling than what you felt with your last team before you made the roster moves. And for Ariel Arise, guess what? They didn't take 2 steps back. That means that they're technically 2 steps ahead of every team. They should try to
Oh.
use that growth that they've been able to kind of accumulate in the offseason. No stress on the side of, oh my gosh, who are we going to pick up? Who is going to make our team better? We already dropped this player. Like, what are we going to do? There's the stress in there. You're doing your tryout process. You're no longer kind of pushing forward on your map pool because you got to teach somebody your map pool. You got to teach somebody the strats and
Mhm.
scrim over stuff that you've already scrimmed before instead of scrimming the new stuff. And Ariel Arise, they didn't do it. They didn't do it. And Tanner, I'm sure you can talk a million years about how just great that is in between stages, having a solid off season is as a coach.
Yeah, absolutely. As a coach, this kind of puts you in a position where you can build and like be an innovator and think of new ideas and expand upon it because the foundation's set. Your callouts are set, your map pool is set, your strats are set. You can build on new strats, you can develop new things, you can experiment with sends, you can experiment with Aruna, you can be innovators in the game. This is something that we attempted to do last time or last stage last year on Ape in the same kind of scenario where we had a really good foundation and we just started going to maps that teams aren't comfortable with,
Mhm.
like Chalet and Skyscraper and stuff like that. And now Ariel Rise is once again in that position. They can build off that chemistry, and it just gets better and better as time progresses.
Well, if you're that same team and you don't have to work on the old maps that you all know, is this the opportunity to bring out those new ones and force the hands of other teams?
Absolutely, absolutely. Unfortunately for Ariel Rise, this won't be the game where they're going to be able to do that because Nocturnes, I don't know if it's to their benefit or to their detriment, but they also have an absolutely massive map pool. Last stage, they played 7 different maps. Yesterday, in the what did Cookies call it? The San Francisco Challenger League. Nocturnes played on Chalet, which was a perma ban that they didn't play in stage one. So that's 8 out of 9 maps that Nocturnes feels comfortable going to. Whether or not they have a lot of success on that map is different. Going all the way through, we're going all the way down to Oregon. This was a map that wasn't shown by Ariel Rise all of stage one. Historically, this has been one of their best maps, however, in stage two and
Hmm.
three of last year. And Nocturnes, they played it once last stage and they lost that game in regulation. So, this is going to be a game where, maybe the change of the entire dynamic of Nocturnes allows this equalizer to be favorable. And maybe they feel like they're up to the task of handling what is considered to be one of the best maps for Ariel Rise.
Would you say we'll throw the predictions up here, Connor? Would you say any points for Nocturnes is a win at this stage?
According to our predictions, yeah,
Yeah.
because nobody believes in them at
I
all.
I'm scared here though. And not because of the generic how we always joke about the curse. I'm
Mhm.
scared here because as much as I can't not vote for Ariel Arise in this scenario, given the history of last stage, with Nocturnes, this is absolutely one, Connor, that they could just sweep from under Ariel Arise.
I mean, especially because of the map choice. This is a good
Mhm.
old gut check fundamentals kind of map that kind of lends itself to the upset factor. Your organs in your clubhouses, those are kind of where you expect to see upsets. And sure, you might see on the screen a forceful predicted Ariel Arise, and he has a 0% prediction
It's not
percentage.
true.
But
It's
that's
not
it. It's an
accurate.
it's an error. It's an error in the coding. It is not. He's not a lame Mickey analyst. I promise you that. He's also at like
Fraudulent.
a 60 or an 80%. So you got to give him some respect.
Oh man, I don't know.
And
I wouldn't want to take Jay or Freak to this map. I don't know if that's a good decision by Nocturnes, but you know,
Mhm.
maybe they're feeling themselves. Maybe in scrims everything's different. New stage, new off season. We'll see.
I think early on you just got to go where you feel best, and it came down to Oregon for these two teams where they want to start off. Although Ariel Rise does have a game under their belt today, I think it's like Connor said, it's a gut check, not just because it's Oregon, but it's that first game. Nocturnes, a lot of turnover, a lot to figure out. I'm excited to get into it. We are going to the final matchup of the day. Nocturnes going to Oregon to take on Ariel Rise. We'll throw it over to the casters.
Thank you very much, Jim. Jonah, today's been a great day. We've seen some wonderful debuts like Dexter, like Asian, and now it's Doc's turn, our inaugural man in this game. But Nocturne's Aerial Rise, I have to say, although casting LG Oculix was great, Oculix with their resurgence, LG coming back into the scene, this was the game that I was looking
I mean, this should be pretty great. It's a bummer that we're going to Oregon, but I guess you can look on the bright side and you can say that both of these teams should know how to deliver on this map.
for.
That's all you can say about Oregon, right? We're probably going to see it 100 million times this stage. We saw it 100 million times last stage, and we've already seen it today. But these two teams should give us a battle. We all do think Ariel Arise are going to take this one, and that's more reinforced by the fact that Ariel Arise took down Gaming Gladiators 7-2 in an off-stream game just a moment ago. It really does seem that they are the favorites in this match. We're not going to count Nocturnes out. Like the Aqualix LG game, this should be pretty damn close.
Because, and the main reason why we're all voting Ariel Arise is because it's just that bias towards the standings. Ariel Arise were only a couple points off of first place. In fact, they would have come in first place had Gasher not beat them in that very last game versus Nocturnes, who, didn't finish great. They were in, what? They finished like 10th out of 12 teams, something like that. So, that's mainly why we're voting Ariel Arise, not only because of the history, but also because Ariel Arise are still the core five. Nocturnes have changed 3 members. There's going to be some growing pains. And although the analyst desk highlighted that Ariel Arise lost Smitty, they did retain Fettuccini, who has proven himself to be a very capable coach. Always got to shout out my Chinese brother. Love that guy. So, Ariel Arise still have a good support staff behind them. Talking about the bands, Hibana and Thatcher as the attackers. Thatcher, very normal. Hibana, a little bit odd on this map. Normally, it's like a Maverick or a different hard breacher, but that does force out the Maverick in order to open those hatches, so take a little bit longer.
Yeah, the bands, as always, or as has been the theme today, not a shocker to see these bans. Obviously, the Azami is something that we are going to continue to see banned pretty often. I imagine in all levels of play, those Kiva barriers can be exceptionally powerful if a defense knows what they're doing, and it's just another piece of utility that attackers would have to expend to deal with that added barrier they'll have to work their way through. But not today, not on Oregon. We're not going to see the Azami in play. And like you said, Harrison, nor will we see the Valkyrie. Those black eye cameras and that extra intel will not have a place in this final game of the day. On the attacking side, though, these bans aren't going to impact play too much. The lack of a Hibana will limit those hatches from getting opened up, but with the presence of a Maverick, you throw in a secondary hard breacher, you bring in the Thermite, you bring in the Ace, and really, you're not going to have many hard breach worries at all. It'll be Nocturnes to start off on the attacking side with a pretty standard lineup, both the Maverick and the Thermite, like I said a moment ago, and they're going to have to begin on a basement attack.
Why is Reed Adams' name Bonge Reed?
Or is it like a Matt Bonger?
Oh, Bonger Reed? Did
Who
he
knows?
misspell Binge Reed? That would be pretty funny. That's the funniest. So I'm gonna assume Reed Adams misspelled binge read. But speaking of Doc, he's going to be on that flex role for Nocturne. So he'll, I guess, alleviate that role from Splash, who was mainly playing that flex role when he was on ATK. Now he's on entry, along with Xeno, one of those primary entries from Karn & Co. And speaking of, our brand new player will lead off with a kill on none other than Mohes, one of the most consistent players we have seen in Challenger League in the past couple years.
Yeah, good start for this attack. Doc will be looking to maybe find another as he tries to pin down these lurkers over by the kitchen and now security side of things. Both Freak and Jay close and cuddling one another here in security before they drop down to safety of the site. But good early progress from Nocturns. Already a minute burned, only a minute burned, and essentially they have cleared out all of the more dangerous roamers. There's one they haven't identified though, and that is Reed Adams, as you said, Harrison, binge Reed, who is up in T3. And it appears that Nocturnes haven't spotted him out. And while that may not be a problem right now, maybe in about 30 seconds, about 45 seconds, when this execute eventually begins, things will get very problematic.
Drone getting taken out by Freak, obviously just playing on those steps to deny said drone before falling back. Speaking of, Jonah, there are only 4 remaining. Oh. Reed! Unseen, still in T3. Gets a very easy headshot as he just watches Splash descend the staircase, trying to see if anyone would follow him, of course, but there was no one. Settles for the singular kill, and now Slothy is going to be tasked with trying to clear him out. Nade will completely miss. And now Slothy is probably saying, hey, Poison, there's a guy in T3. What the hell do we do about him? It looks like they're just going to ignore him, as Xeno and Doc have already made their way down blue. Slothy now trying to go main and join Poison on the main execute, and Xeno will end up getting a frag. Toxic Gas Canister goes out in response to choke off these players in Freezer, make sure they can't pressure the doorway any longer as Xeno breathes a little bit of that in. 20 seconds remaining now. Jay off the board, so is Reed Sync, and now the Wamai coming back to site. He's the only man left. Finished off by Slothy. Now Nocturnes take round number 1.
Well, they got the opener, and although they had a couple of troubles here and there and a couple of unnoticed roamers, mostly just that T3 player, they really didn't have any other issues besides that, especially since they committed to that push once they identified the position of the Wamai. That was the big thing, because those T3 players, while they can be a threat, and while they can maybe pick up a kill or two if you're not paying attention, the one thing they can't do is actually protect the site. If you're all the way up there in tower, your only way down is to, vault down over a couple of railings or scale that ladder back down towards the bottom of tower and pillars. The problem is you are leaving your team out to dry, and Nocturnes took full advantage. That is a good read of the situation. No read pun intended. And it is a great adaptation mid-round after the damage had been dealt. Rather than sacrificing more bodies and throwing too much utility, spending too much time dealing with Reed Adams, they just said, you know what, let's just send it downstairs, take the fights, and force that Wamai to come back.
Yeah, I mean, because they already started off with the opening kill on Mo, they pretty much knew, hey, if we all rotate site, we have the man advantage, we can play trade, which they did in kind. Sure, the smoke tried to stop the men in Freezer, but in the end, it was not enough. Xeno was still able to find an angle. Those Freezer players really came in clutch up until Reed Adams' big flank, but at that point, sight had already fallen. Now, we find ourselves back downstairs in Laundry, only we've got a swap. Instead of Maverick, it's Jackal, figuring, hey, if Arial are going to roam so heavily, a lot of these hatches are going to be either unreinforced or straight up open to allow for fallback. Freak, the first player to take an engagement and to take damage from one of those roam clearers. There's a lot of bodies bearing down on him. He's likely to fall back soon. Otherwise, he'll be a dead man, likely to either splash or dock.
Well, I'm loving Doc and the confidence that we're seeing the Sledge just exude in this lobby. Just pushing in some cases alone, but with some drone support, with that information, forcing out these roamers early. It's how he was able to get that opening pick in that last round, a kill that Nocturns leveraged for the remainder of the round. This time, though, well, we're going to flip the script. It's Arial Arise to get the opener. That one onto Splash, who's 0-2 at the moment, and that is going to slow things down on this attack. Arial Arise will take the moment, will take that kill, and will rotate back to site as a result. And it does give control of the rest of this map to Nocturns, but now they've lost a body and there's under 90 seconds to go.
Staring down Freezer once again. Arial Arise have not lost an early body this time. Poison slowly opening this laundry hatch, leaving Slothy upstairs to cover. They will burn the Aruna Gate with a smoke rather than a flash as more burn goes in. Zeno and Doc, the two men with nades, tasked with taking Freezer, but now it's just, never mind. It's no one. Both of them cut down by Mo before Poison finally refrags, but it's a 2 versus 4, make it a 1v4 as Freak turns on his heels, frags out Poison, and is there to tag down Slothy as well. I don't think either of them expected the other to be there, but Freak, again, turns around just in time. It's the Freak and Mo show to give Arial Arise the tying round.
The Freak and Mo show.
Yes.
Faux show. See what I did there?
Uh-huh.
Nice. Anyway, Oregon brings the worst out of me. It really does. But we are tied up at 1 thanks to a well-defended basement site. Arial Arise, they go back there 2 in a row, and, I mean, really, the adjustment they made was finding the opening pick rather than getting opening picked, and then falling back to site soon after. They didn't have to worry about somebody stuck in T3 because they didn't commit to that position either, and really, they just played those engagements down below on the site. They knew that Nocturns would be in a bit of a tough spot when you're committing to bringing that Jackal. You're really hoping on the attack that you can get full use of that Jackal rather than getting one of your teammates killed early and then having everybody scramble back to the site, making the primary utility of that Jackal essentially useless. When it actually came to the site push, that gadget isn't going to help you do much, and just barreling your way down Freezer and Laundry didn't have much success either. So a much more dominant round for Arial than Nocturns were hoping for, and now Arial will pivot things up, and naturally, they will head upstairs to dorms next.
Very different lineup. Now bringing the Mute and the Frost in the mix. Clearly a lot of delay power going on. Comboing those two shields with Aruni and Wamai. Intel denial as well to make sure that Nocturns aggresses just a tad a bit slower. Every second you waste in this game can be oh so useful as a defender. Well, we'll spot a couple of drones, but be unable to capitalize. As Nocturns continue to clear. It's a completely small tower-sided push, though, and because of this Ying, as well as the Capital, makes me think they're going for a big window white play.
Yeah, it does look like it, especially now that they're setting up a couple of air jabs down below, hoping to limit this defense and their fluidity on the site and down below the site. With a C4 in Freak's pocket, you're just hoping that that can be at least removed early or put Freak in an uncomfortable spot where he can't actually throw that and deny the plant or deny that entry. Where is Freak right now anyway? It looks like everyone is up above on the site itself. Nocturns do seem to be aware of that. There's Freak stuck over in attic. That C4 not going to be all that helpful from that position, but he could always rotate down below and try to sneak it up from there. But for now, he will remain stagnant, as will this attack, because right now their focus is just getting some more intel. If they can, leveraging these nades from below to get a couple of early kills before they actually push.
But they've used, well, all of them. Not a single frag has come of it. Doc setting up for the Ying. He'll try and go through, but they didn't even clear the Frost. Poison gets finished off by the gas canister. Zeno, at least there's a refrag. Doc takes a lot more damage as he tries to make his way in. Slothy swings the man count before Jay refrags, and Doc doesn't know what to do. He can't plant. It's not safe. Reed Adams comes out of nowhere, materializes right next to the Ying, shotguns him down. Splash once again trades. Neither team able to escape with the advantage. We're down to a 1v1, but Splash is oh so low. He's going to have to hit the shot of a lifetime on the head of Jay if he wants to win this round. Both players know exactly where the other is at, and he wins it! Doesn't even need the heady, he body shots Jay down, and Nocturnes steal the point.
I have no idea how Splash doesn't take a single bit of HP of damage there, but hey, he wins the round. That was a fumbling and bumbling execute. It really didn't ever feel cohesive, and it was kind of all over the place, right? We saw the Candelas thrown in, countered by a well-placed Toxic Smoke, and then we saw the Thermite just run into a Frost Mat and die. Then we saw a couple of other attackers push in here, push in there. We saw Reed stuck in the middle, we saw Reed Adams get a kill onto the Ying, who was stuck in the middle of dorms. Kind of took too much map control and didn't have a teammate to support that position. But what the heck? You leave Splash alone in a 1v2 with 1 HP, and I guess he can win it. And at the end of the day, that's all you're asking for. So Arial Arise, despite what looked like a pretty cohesive hold, and several options of denying that execute. They seemed really prepared for it too. They just couldn't close it out. That's now happened in 2 rounds, both in round 3 and round number 1, where Nocturnes are taking full advantage of a slightly unprepared or a slightly flustered defense. Splash makes it work and takes the round.
And you really gotta admire the tradability from Nocturnes in that round. Amongst the chaos, amongst the confusion where it looked like Arial Arise would run away with it, Nocturnes were trading back and forth and back and forth. And I think that's a big highlight with this big roster change, you know, bringing in Splash, Xeno, and Doc. You know, no hate to the previous roster and anyone else who's been on this team, but I feel like this team has the most raw fragging potential that we've ever seen from Nocturnes. Because sometimes Nocturnes are very strategically sound and they just kind of lose their fights, but clearly that's not the issue with this new team.
Yeah, right now, the gunfights have generally been going their way. They've been taking heads, and even in a couple of messy situations, they've been able to come out on top. They'll try to do that again as they work their way to dorms and see how they're going to change this attack up. Last time it was that big window white focus, thanks to those Candelas, really allows you to go for those more exposed and aggressive positions. But this time, we don't see the Ying, and we don't see the same attack at all. Instead, it's focused on this east side, an entry through Armory, and opening up this master wall from the side. Slothy will take advantage of that distraction and work his way around the other side to take care of Freak. But Reed will answer and finish off the Nook in kind. He is cut down to 1 HP though, so Reed will not be fighting at full force for the remainder of this round.
Such little HP that even a tickle from a nade might be enough to bring him down. Maybe not a kill, but at the very least a down but not out. Eager to see how this Thorn is being played around by Mo. Don't believe we've actually heard any of them go off yet. Not quite sure where they're placed. Splash is just on the doorway. Ends up going 1 for 1. We're back to an even 3v3, but like it highlighted, Reed very low. But despite that, he'll still get the down onto Doc. The Sledge looking resible as Poison starts to make his way down Attic and towards Pit. He has to fight this Aruni at some point. The Finka boost is enough to bring Doc back from the dead, but he's very quickly finished off by a nice pre-fire from Reed Sync. 3 versus 2 now equalized by Poison walking through, making another for the IGL of Nocturnes. Now it's Reed Adams alone, a nade in his face. He cuts down the Finka. Now Poison has the info. Shotgun out to finish. He'll dart back across the doorway, tuck himself in the corner as Poison begins to get the plant down. Thorn device forces him off. The Razor Bloom goes through. Another one to stop him from planting, delaying even more time. Soon he'll have to stick, but Reed Adams, he's not pushing. Poison gets it down. He can lift off and take the fight, and he wins it. 3 kills in a row for the IGL, and Nocturnes go up 3-1.
3 huge kills and a nice clutch to close it out. That's back-to-back dorm attacks where Nocturnes have won it just by the skin of their teeth. But if you look at the round count, and when you're at the end of the match and you look at the scoreboard, it doesn't matter how you got there. It just matters that you got there. And Nokturns have now done it twice. It was Splash, and then it was Poison. Another example today, and we've seen this several times on Playday #1, where defensive teams are allowing that bomb to go down, where they're slightly hesitant, maybe not stepping up as early as they should, and all of a sudden, the attacker is able to stick the plant, get off the diffuser, and take your life. Exactly what Poison did, and it was well played.
Apparently, his crouch key, Splash's crouch key, is no longer working, and he has to swap keyboards. So hopefully we're not here for too long, as we get a little tech pause approved by the admins to extend it slightly to give Splash enough time to get that keyboard. Of course, because it is a, tech pause, they do not get to talk to their coaches. At least I believe that's how that works. So, I'm sure both Arial, Rise, and Nokturns are talking amongst themselves now. Nokturns hyping themselves up and telling each other to keep it up. Maybe talking over that last round because, a clutch is never the ideal way to win. There's always things you can improve if you win off of the clutch, as we get the R from Nokturns. Arial or Rise need to have some kind of discussion because that's now 2 rounds where it's really looked like they've been in the advantage and have let it slip away.
And it's a theme that they need to quash now. They've got to do it now because Nokturns have gotten their 3 rounds. They've gotten the maximum rounds they are really supposed to secure on any Oregon attacking half. And Arial Rise, they've only found 1. They need 2 more. Really, if they want to go into the second half, their own attacking side with that confidence that we know they can have, that we know they bring to every game, you'd really like them to be about even when you go into the switch. Attacking half on Oregon, you go up 4-1, you go up 5-1. It is a daunting comeback for the defense, or really in any situation. So Arial Rise, they know it is their time to switch it up. And I gotta say, when I saw that timeout pop, I really thought it would be Arial Rise taking a tack timeout, given the lack of success in these back-to-back defenses on a site that generally goes the defensive way. Instead, it was Nokturns who took that tech pause, and Arial Rise will still have to figure something out as we enter round number 5.
The Arial Rise are able to make something happen as we once again see the Ying brought out, but Jonah! There's a sense.
Let's go.
Or I guess sense is Belgian, so it's more like sans.
Sauls.
Or it could be, what would it be? That would be the French Belgian, because there's also German Belgian, which would sound more like sense.
I will admit I'm not intimately familiar with French Belgian or German Belgian culture.
Well, English is a Germanic language, so you should be able to speak it fine.
Oh, my bad.
Nevertheless, the Belgian operator coming out. So, a ton of smoke presence for Doc and Xeno. And the main counter to that, a Warden not present for Arial Rise. They do, however, have the Wamai and the Jaeger. If you don't know how Sense interacts with those 2 operators, if you didn't watch the deal, a Wamai disc will simply redirect the, what the hell? What is it called?
A Sen's projector is what we go with.
All right. It'll redirect the wheelie thing that drops the projectors, and I believe Jaeger will straight up destroy it. So hopefully Doc is a little careful. Of course, he's got hard breach charges, as does the Ying, which is why you see no other hard breach on the squad. But I am very excited to see what they do with this.
Yes, often we'll see that Sen's projector wall used to just springboard and execute, right? If you block off an entire line of sight, you completely limit what the defense can do. You can make the call and say, okay, it's time to push. Here's Doc throwing down that first and now the second projector to enable what looks like Splash to push in bunker. That didn't work at all because Splash was sprayed down through the wall. Now Doc is going to work their way around into long haul here, try to spray some people through the soft wall. Not going to work for him, but it will work for Xeno as he picks up 1. That returns us to a 4v4, but that final projector now done. It's going to have to be an old-fashioned execute here for Nocturns without that Sen's gadgetry. Now, Doc with the DMR will pick up a kill, so 2 defenders have been felled, but 15 seconds, that is all that remains for this Nocturns attack. They've got to get aggressive, and they've got to do it now. Poison gets an impressive kill onto ReedSync right after Slothy gets one of his own. It's all up to Mo, who has only 4 seconds to deny, but 4 very tough seconds, because now this bomb is going down. Gets 1 kill, but Xeno hops off the plant and takes him down. That is round 5 that goes the way of Nocturns, and Arial Arise are in a heap of trouble.
That was an incredibly impressive kill on the Doc at the end there, but sadly, not enough. They used the Sense, what you use Sense for. Instead of having to dedicate all of Yang's utility to dropping the E-Box hatch, they instead use 1 and put the majority of it on the back of the Sense smokes, or the Sense walls, I guess we can call them, those smoke walls. Because of that, they retain a lot of that Ying's utility. Now, I thought that they were going to use a lot more utility than they did on the execute. I thought that was the entire point of the Sense, was to conserve utility, to use it on the site. They didn't really do too much of that. I think the Ying used 1 Candela after, which again allowed for a little more movement. But the highlight is, once again, Nocturns now have the fragging power to beef up their strats. Even if the strat goes slightly awry, like we just saw, where they weren't using a lot of utility on site, Arial Arise were only down a man, they walk in and they frag out. Poison, killing ReedSync in elbow, was the thing that really started things off. If ReedSync lives there, then he has a possible flank and elbow. He's got the shotgun to play close on the plant spot. That round turns completely on its head, in my opinion, if ReedSync gets that kill, but he didn't. Poison was better. He had the support of his team. And Arial Arise, the 2nd place team from last stage, find themselves down 3 rounds on Oregon defense.
Oh boy. Arial Arise, like I said a moment ago, in a heap of trouble. And they've got to fight their way out of this hole. At the bare minimum, they absolutely need this final defensive round. Issue is that given the lack of success on dorms and that loss on basement a moment ago, they are heading now to a tertiary bomb site in hopes that this is enough to give them the edge back, to find that round 2 defensive success that we just have not seen since. It's going to be kitchen and meeting hall. Looks like they're structuring a pretty standard top floor hold with reinforcements on that game's wall, a deployable shield facing games from attic, and a good bit of defensive presence extended on this first floor as well. That's what ReedSync is up to on the prowl over by Small Tower Dining and Showers Corridor right now.
Bringing the Thorn again as well. I was figuring that they would just like a shield and added info, I suppose. A lot of people use Thorn similarly to an Ella as a shield slash kind of like trap info or info trap operator. Thorn, just some people prefer because her gun is a lot more wieldly. Ella can sometimes be a little bit. That's well, Thorns does a hell of a lot of damage because I think it's canonically like a 50 cal Uzi or something ridiculous like that. So Nocturns now have to clear upstairs. There's a shield staring them in the face from attic as Poison opens that main wall without much trouble. Luckily, Nocturns have a whole bunch of utility to do.
A lot of utility in pocket, including 4 more frag grenades. 2 still in the hands of Splash. We haven't seen him whip those out just yet, relying on those from Xeno right now instead. You've got the 6 flashes, now only 3 flashes, now that Slothy has been taken care of in terms of that utility game. But a good kill onto ReedSync from Poison, who is on a heater right now, will bring things back to even. Xeno and Poison are creeping their way in down below, trying to apply direct pressure to this site, maybe get this cutoff, but with Splash working his way around, with Doc pressuring from there as well, it's going to be a direct site take. No one is bothering with that top floor, and just in, 2 seconds? 4 kills have been found, and Nocturns finish off the half with 5-1.
I don't even know how that happened. There were 3 people upstairs. One got a kill, fell off, traded out by Poison. Then I believe it was Freak and... Actually, it may have been Freak and Mo. Still left upstairs. I don't know. It was Freak and someone. All I know is one of them was the Thorn. And Nocturns decide that, you know what? Going 1-1 is enough. That's all we need. Because there's so much upstairs presence, Nocturns can take the 3v2 on site, leaving Doc upstairs to flank watch, and it works flawlessly. Poison and Xeno coming in through Shower Hall. Splash pressuring Split, getting his kill. After he gets that, Nocturns or Arial Arise are likely like, hey, guys, they're on the site. They've killed an anchor. You gotta get back here. And little do they know, Doc is upstairs, kills both those roamers, leaves the Maestro on an island in the middle of nowhere with 2 different angles to worry about, and he was staring at the wrong one. That was a beautiful attack from Nocturns. I know CJ talked about Mr. B being, you know, the current IGL pillar right now, but Poison is definitely up there with him, and I'm really glad that now he's got, you know, the firepower he needs to back that up.
Talking about firepower, I just took a look at the frags, and always pleases me to see so many contributors on the side of one team. Yeah, so even on the side of Nocturnes. The same can't quite be said for Arial Arise, with Freak and Jay taking up the rear in terms of the overall kills, but everyone on Nocturnes putting in the work. I mean, Doc, who's had some critical plays, as you mentioned earlier, Harrison, that kill in Bunker in Elbow as he took that control is just one example, has 4 kills and is only 1 kill behind, you know, both Slothy and Splash. And now that they're on the defensive side, really could see these players start to heat up even more now that they have a little bit more freedom to move around this map, maybe take some early gunfights and catch Arial Arise off guard. Now that they're out to a 5-1 attacking half, I mean, talk about the confidence builder that has to be. Already a minute burned in this attack, though, for Arial Arise, and it is now their responsibility to find some confidence of their own. They took one earlier off-stream win, 7-2. This is obviously a very different story. They're going to have to work for this one if they want to take the win.
They brought a Dokkaebi, though I'm not quite sure how she's been used thus far. She sent out 1 Logic Bomb, not much action off of it as she sends out the second. Slothy is our first casualty from above. Mo claiming that kill from kind of that little destructible strip in Attic right next to that tower wall. So a good first frag. Slothy, not the most important utility pick, but it is a roamer off the board. It's a player who can no longer fall back to sight, and it gives the advantage towards Arial Arise, but they don't have a whole lot of time to work off of. They've only got a minute left, and they haven't even taken tower. That's going to be on the shoulders of Reed Adams, who has that yin in hand. But even if you're able to force yourself into tower, or sorry, into pillar, and take that E-box control, there's usually still steps you have to do after that, but those steps might be mitigated by kills. Freak with 2, make that 3, and Arial Arise just shuts me up and completely nullifies my...
Okay, well, that's the Arial Arise that we expected to see coming into this game. A team with so much methodical play, so much discipline, and so much preparedness going into each round that they can just snap their fingers and rack up a bunch of kills just like that. And that is exactly what they did. Again, much like that last Nocturnes attack, Arial Arise, in the span of about 3 seconds, get, 4 back-to-back kills and finish off the round in a flawless fashion. That is exactly what they needed to do to start. Personally, I have no idea what just happened to that Nocturnes defense because it all fell apart so quickly. It seemed that Arial Arise, even though they hadn't actually pushed into pillar right about that 1 minute mark, they had people set up in every position they could think of to actually get an eventual push. They had the intel they needed to then unleash that push into pillar, and when they actually made that 3-2-1 execute call, well, everybody was dead. Everybody was stuck out in the open for Nocturns, and they just got caught off guard one by one and lost all their duels. Great round from Arial.
It's just about to go on a whole tangent about how even if you force yourself in, there's still steps after that. Oh, Arial Arise might not have time to do so because you still got to burn utility to make way for you, and then Freak walk down towering.
Man, that's just the way it is sometimes.
That's how Freak operates. Nice to see him go from 2-5 to now even in one round, thanks to a big highlight play. Still going to need more from him and more from the rest of Arial Arise, because you can see, like we highlighted on the side of Nocturns, everyone is contributing. They are all within 2 kills of each other. Meanwhile, Arial Arise has some clear standout performers. Well, you know, Jay and Reed Sync are catching up a bit. Still not quite what you want to see, especially considering the round count. This time, Nocturns won't be roaming as avidly. This time, they are all collected down on site with a much heavier delay tactic style setup. Not only do they have that Cade to protect those breaches, they've got 2 shields, they've got Goyo in their back pocket, as well as Freak sends it down the freezer stairs and trades with the smoke of all operators.
Yeah, good trade, honestly, for Arial Arise, I'd say. Obviously, they don't want to lose the Finka, but you take care of the smoke. At that point, you've only got to worry about those nitro cells and those Goyo canisters in terms of that plant denial and area denial. Now those toxic smokes aren't a worry, and you can push in without needing to fret about a shotgun or some smokes in your face. It's a 4v4, so Nocturns also have to be a bit more careful with these remaining bodies and playing around this utility especially. But speaking of, another well-placed Rotero drone will deal with that deployable shield in that long hall facing freezer. That should give Arial another entry point that they were looking for as they continue to force these defenders back. Look at how these Flores drones are being utilized, forcing Doc to back off, forcing Slothy to back off, which should eventually give this freezer and laundry control to Arial. Question is, are they going to take it? Or are they going to go for a back take with E-Box opened up and Pillars an option? Could that be it instead?
Poison and Doc are big X factors here. Flashes go in. Do they know about Poison and Bunker? It seems like it might not matter. It's a front side push, taking advantage of this Ying. Doc gets a kill with the Thorn. Slothy, another kill for Doc with the Razor Blooms? That is unheard of. That is on, at some point, it is on you for getting killed by that trap. Thorn herself will be shut down, making it a 1 versus 2 for Reed Sync, but it's not enough. Jonah, 2 people died to an inanimate object. A set and forget trap that takes like 3 seconds to detonate. That doesn't happen, and it's a 3 versus 2 for Arial.
That is a bit ludicrous, I gotta say. Occasionally, and I feel like every so often, maybe once every 2 maps, or maybe once every 3 maps, we see the Thorn brought out consistently, we'll actually see a Razor Bloom kill. Have we ever seen 2 in the same round, though? Good question.
I don't even know how many times we've seen 2 in the same map. Usually it's like one a map.
At some level of T1 Siege, we've seen 2 in the same map, but 2 in the same round, this may be the first time ever. I'm just saying. It could be the first time ever. I mean, that is either incredibly big brain Razor Bloom placement, or that is simply, Arial Arise just not paying attention or lingering in some positions where they really shouldn't be. Either way, that's 2 big kills for Doc. He'll happily take those, and that is a big round for Nocturns because they stopped whatever momentum Arial Arise were hoping to build with that flawless round. It's now match point for them, up 6-2. They've got a 4-round cushion to put this game away.
And they're going to dorms, a site they have not defended yet. Arial Arise will be going into this mostly blind. Nocturns are, once again, bringing a lot of utility. 2 shields. Goyo pads. They've got the ADSs to try and cover. They've got the mutes as well, but the Goyo himself, well, I don't really know what Zeno's plan was there. He was kind of like thrown behind a shield, maybe trying to get an angle, maybe trying to sneak by, or I don't know what he was doing, he obviously had a goal in mind, and it didn't pan out. Reed Sink will shut him down very early on, and while, you know, his Goyo canisters are on the field, they do lose one of only 2 C4s.
Slothy taking an aggressive fight with nobody on the window, but making sure it was clear before retaking that position, an important position in security. Holding that with a shotgun and a C4 is always important for the defense, because if Arial do eventually go for that white stairs, dorms, big window push, well, you've got somebody down below to deny it nice and easily. 2 options, both the pre-prepped shotgun holes and a nitro cell to boot. You've got everything to work with there. But first, Arial Rise actually have to get to that point of the round. With 90 seconds to go, there is still a lot of work for them to do if they want to approach from the dorm side, that is. If they want to approach from the game side, it looks like they have a bit more of a direct avenue to actually work their way on in. You've got Master and Trophy, which has been cleared out. You've got Reed Adams looking to get that wall open, and you've got a pretty huge amount of attacking pressure building from here as well.
I like the early burn of the Goyos as well from the attack, really doing their due diligence, making sure that once it gets down to crunch time, they're not going to be stopped by any wayward flames. Gas canisters being used very early on by Poison as well. He's only got 1 left, and the C4 from Slothy has been wasted. Long angle held by Reed Adams is good for 1. Reed Sink and Mo both follow it up. Doc gets 2, but he can't get the 3rd. Reed Sink shuts him down, and Arial Arise keep themselves alive for now.
Yeah, they stay alive here on their attacking side with a pretty clean dorms attack. Like you said, methodical, really thinking about how they can deal with every single piece of utility before they actually make that execute. Those Vulcan canisters from the Goyo, I mean, really, that was the big thing. At least that was the thing we could see the clearest in terms of the patience of Arial Arise, because every time they spotted one of those canisters, for example, they would make sure they had some way of dealing with that, whether that was, you know, with a Flores drone, with a frag grenade, or just have somebody get an angle on it and deal with it early. That was the most important thing, because when it came to the push, and this is how Arial Arise avoided the mistakes of that last round, when it came to that push, they could push in cleanly without being held up and being pushed into some razor blooms, for example, or lines of sight or nitro cells or anything of the sort. They were able to push through cleanly, penetrate all the way into the site, taking those gunfights and winning the round. So Nocturns, that 4-round cushion is reduced to 3.
Still not terrible for Nocturns. I'm sure they're still a little comfortable. That was probably, you know, that was just a throwaway round. That was pretty dominant from Arial Rise of your Nocturns. You think about that, you're like, all right, guys, we just kind of got outplayed there. Let's not let it get to our heads. We still only need 1 round to win. Even if they lose here, Jonah, they can still go back down to Laundry, which is, as we know, Old Faithful when it comes to this match. Pretty, actually, I was going to say pretty similar. The exact same operator lineup as we saw in the previous round, but Zeno has not gotten killed within the first 30 seconds. So if he's able to exude his presence in Trophy, maybe it takes a little bit longer for Arial Arise to get in. Maybe those smoke canisters and Goyo canisters get held onto for a little bit longer, and maybe Arial Arise can't flood in as efficient. No, never mind. He's not in trouble.
Yeah, just repositioning,
that's another
working his way around. I mean, it's the same idea, though. I mean, he's got an easy avenue to potentially swing that doorway and deny those entry points from Arial Arise, who are, again, taking their time here and getting some intel before they step up. This time, instead of putting their early focus on Master or on the dorm's big window, it's going to be on the attic side instead, as they work their way up from the tower side. Splash is a potential problem for this attack if they continue to go this attic route, because if he works his way up from T1, all of a sudden, those are a couple of nice kills that he can find to put Nocturns over the edge. Doesn't look like he's been spotted or droned out. I do imagine there is a flank drone somewhere in T1. Just so happens that the drone isn't looking at the staircase, but here comes Splash. Unimpeded, goes all the way up, makes a little bit of noise while doing so, and actually gets a bit too nervous for his own good. Pre-fires a window, but looks like Jay, being on his drone, he still doesn't know. Poison's able to pick up a kill, and look at this. Jay still has no idea that Splash is there. Switching around from drone to drone, though, so clearly nervous that someone might be in the tower side. Caught between a rock and a hard place, though, he will choose to get closer to the site and now to get more involved now that his team is down a player.
He seems to have gotten away from the clutches of Splash, at least for now, as the Alibi repositions inside Attic itself. There's 2 players now stacked up in there in that long hallway. The Jaeger peeks out, takes some damage from Mo. In comes the Thermite, takes a little team damage, but he's getting this plant down. 2 C4s still on the board. Doc, a beautiful shot onto Mo. Reed Adams dead to the Nitro Cell. Jay is down, and it's all over. Nocturns, a dominant 7-3 win, cutting down Arial Arise. They look so improved.
Yeah, put some respect on their name. You know, even all of us who may have predicted Ariel to win this game, we need a little bit of admonishing here because we did not do our homework. Look at Nocturns putting in the work, everyone contributing. Doc with 10 kills to finish out the day. An impressive performance from the entire team, though, really limiting Arial Arise from getting hot, from getting any momentum on both the defensive and the attacking side. But what's going to stick out in all of our minds and will likely be a talking point every time we see Nocturns over the next few Playdays, a 5-1 Oregon attacking half against a very impressive defensive team in Arial Arise. Not something that many teams can do, but Nocturns just did it, and that's what put them over the top.
That's crazy, because, I mean, you think about Arial Arise, not only are they a structured, strategically sound team, but they have the guns to back it up, and those guns just came awake a little too late. You only had a couple players who were consistently fragging up until, you know, the tail end of the map, but like I said, too little too late. Nocturns were awake pretty much the whole time. We know how much of a tested IGL Poison is. He's got the T3 firepower now to back him up, with Dot coming through the scene. Splash, who we saw have some really impressive performances back on, you know, ATK. Xeno, who is one of the highlights for Karn & Co. Slothy, who's been super consistent. And something I noticed about the game, too, is there were a couple rounds that Arial Arise lost where there was like a big mistake, right? Like getting killed by 2 different thorn traps. And it's like, oh, that was it. That did him in. When Nocturns lost those 3 rounds, it wasn't like that. It was more Arial Arise digging in and getting frags. There was no big, like, mind-blowing screw up from Nocturns. And I think that really shows just how solid that they're becoming.
Yeah, definitely promising as we head towards the future. Only the first Playday, but so much more Siege to come, not only from Nocturns, but all of the teams you saw, or in some cases, didn't get to see today. But for the last time, we will send it back to our wonderful analyst desk, and they'll tell us really what this game was about.
Well, we said it going into the matchup. If there was any team that could do it, it would be Nocturns, because they just seem to play well against good teams. Now, Tanner, I'll start with you, and don't get me wrong, we are going to talk up Nocturns in just a second, because obviously they played really well. But on the side of Arial Arise, was it a couple, like 1 or 2 issues, or was it a plethora of issues? What was going wrong for them that they just couldn't seem to get it together in this match?
Honestly, it wasn't all that much that they were doing all that wrong, other than just losing gunfights. There were a couple rounds where they were close, you know, 1v1s, you know, they just needed to close them out. You know, the Reed had that 1v1 versus Poison. You know, Poison just walked in and gets 3 picks. I think the biggest thing, if we're talking about on the defensive half of Arial Arise that they needed to shore up, was definitely not playing like a turret. Like, once they get these picks, I believe they got the entry pick quite a bit on the defensive half, for them to just, you know, don't just concede. You got to maintain tempo. You got to maintain pressure. You got to stay in their face. You can't let them get stuff for free, especially on a map like Bunk's defense, where, you know, you just get naded from below, or you just get pinched out and the crossfires get cut real easily with smokes. They just needed to get a little bit more active. They needed to move their feet a little bit more. And I think maybe they could have won a couple of gunfights. But that being said, like Nocturnes played lights out. They played absolutely
Yeah.
stellar. Like just walking into sight and getting 3 picks, like that's winning these 1v1s. Good teams find a way to win rounds, and Nocturnes came to play today, and it was very clear that they're not messing around this stage at all.
Well, Connor, then I'll flip the question to you, the exact opposite question. What was it that Nocturnes did so well? Did they focus on their own game, or did they also manage to, take Ariel's game and just blow it to pieces? They did not allow them to play their game.
I mean, I think the biggest thing is just you can boil this game down to the fact that Nocturnes had a significantly larger amount of firepower on their side. They had
Mhm.
more shooters, and those shooters were indeed hitting shots as well as on their attacks. They got that 5-1 split, and a lot of that success was because the biggest shooter on the side of Ariel Arise wasn't really taking gunfights. Freak
Mhm.
was getting naded from below or shot in the back, or he wasn't getting to shoot his gun at all. And that just let them have so much freedom to the fact that you have players like Reedsync and Reed who are not as mechanically skilled as somebody like Freak all of a sudden are getting pre-fired by an LMG when they only have an SMG-11 to defend themselves. Those aren't gun fun. Those are not good and fun gunfights to have taken.
Mhm.
And overall, just when everything boils down, once again, this is the playstyle that we've seen Poison have the most success when he has IGL'd in T3. He has a bunch of shooters. He surrounds himself with shooters. He has aggressive players that will listen. And even when he's the first dead jumping into a window because he jumps into a smoke while Finka boosted and dies immediately, the rest of his team will still trust and listen to his call, and they will make something happen.
Now, Tanner, let's talk about Nocturnes again just for a second, because the thing I want to focus on, we've got one game here. It's a very small sample size, but this didn't look like a team that changed over 3 players and are figuring it out. They seemed to come in today, and it looked like it was last stage where they had subs or something, and then this was the real team that they were waiting for to put together, because they were just in sync. It was all clicking. It was all working.
And I think you got to chalk a lot of that up to the coaching staff. I mean, you have a massive coaching staff. You have a big off season. They were decisive in the picks that they wanted. They somehow managed to get the 3 picks that they needed to reboost the roster up. And then it's just working out the kinks, and that's what a big coaching staff can do for you. They can go over critical points. They can see errors that you're seeing in scrims. They can debrief the guys. They can give them like a game plan to kind of make sure that they're improving upon this stuff. And then of course, it was a really good map choice coming out here from the side of Nocturnes. They didn't go to a map that's like overly complicated for team play. They went to a map that was very simple. Like I said earlier, it's a map that's an equalizer, and everyone should be able to plug and play this kind of map. And they went to a map and they plugged and played, and they looked really good doing it, mainly off of the IGL and the individual gun skill coming out from the side of Nocturnes.
It's also mighty impressive looking at the stats when you see that Nocturnes didn't have a good entry game, but they didn't let that bog them down. Sure, they'd lose a pick, but they would win most of those rounds. It's concerning, Connor, on the other side for Ariel Arise. Now, we didn't get to see their 7-2 game, so obviously things are working for them in some sense, but I mean, when you are leading the entry kills by a considerable margin, but you can't convert those into round wins, there's something to work on.
Yeah, to be fair, you can almost put an asterisk by that because a lot of those engagements were traded. So it'd be going
Yeah.
down immediately to a 4v4. So not necessarily the 4v5. Kind of only one was like round like 9, where I think it was Jay got an upside down repel kill on the master door as somebody still setting up a shield. I believe Zeno inside a trophy on a second floor defense. That's kind of the only first pick that went untraded for the side of Nocturnes, especially on their defensive side. So
Mhm.
there is still the issues of for Ariel Arise of not converting, because this is a team that has experience and should be kind of focusing on the small details. They aren't worrying about catching a player up to speed with strats and overall communication issues, getting call outs, getting their map pool in line. You can focus on the small things like, hey, in a 5v4 execute, we know we can have this extra person
Mhm.
doing a little bit of misdirection somewhere here, somewhere there. There wasn't overall a lot of misdirection on the side of Air the Rise, and they weren't utilizing that man advantage to apply pressure in multiple places. It was a lot of more linear 5-man pushes, hatch drops, overall trying to push down staircases, especially for the basement side, which sure it worked a couple of times, but then when they started losing the rounds, that's when we didn't get to see a whole lot of their attacks.
Mhm. Well, we had a big day today. That's 5 matches down